Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Let's just jump right in today. If you're anything like me, you probably wake up, check your phone, and bam, you are immediately hit with an absolute avalanche of information. I mean, we're navigating one of the most chaotic, fast-moving media landscapes in human history. Every single day, we're bombarded by conflicting headlines, competing narratives, and just endless scrolling. Honestly, it can be exhausting trying to figure out what's actually going on in the world. But today, we're taking a look at a platform that takes a radically different approach to this exact challenge.
Which brings us to the big central question for today's explainer. How do you know if your news is biased? It's a pretty provocative question, isn't it? We all have our own internal filters, sure. But when you're just staring at a headline, how can you objectively measure its slant? Well, today we're taking a guided tour through a platform designed specifically to answer that question, and it does so by relying entirely on the wisdom of the crowd.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with number 1, the FLIC news ecosystem. Then move to 2, decoding the bias meter. 3, we'll look at built-in analysis tools. 4, rating political podcasts. 5 is driving user engagement. And finally, 6, the community verdict. Let's get into it.
Part 1, the FLIC news ecosystem, a world of information. Before we even touch the bias ratings, we really need to understand the sheer breadth of topics this platform pulls in. It's definitely not just your standard news aggregator. You get an incredible contrast right there in the main feed. On one hand, you have incredibly serious, hard-hitting geopolitical news, like The Guardian reporting on France's President Emmanuel Macron and other European leaders condemning Israel's deepening incursion into Lebanon. And then, right next to it, you've got these fascinating cultural stories, like the South China Morning Post reporting on a Buddhist monk bar in Japan's Shinjuku district that serves heaven and hell-inspired drinks and even offers a beading service. It perfectly juxtaposes the intensely serious with the quirky.
And you know, the content goes surprisingly deep. It's not just daily breaking news flashes. Take a look at this historical deep dive right from the feed. It's an article exploring new evidence that 14th century Chinese surgeons were actually making anesthetics from plants, which challenges the widely accepted 1846 Boston ether record. This just goes to show that the platform aggregates science and history right alongside politics and culture. It's a truly comprehensive information diet.
Moving on to part 2. Decoding the bias meter and the power of the crowd.
Now we're getting into the core engine of the platform, the main mechanic that sets it apart from just a regular RSS reader. The crucial thing to understand here is the name itself. FLIC is an acronym. It stands for Fake, Liberal, Independent, Conservative. This is their news bias meter. And the absolutely most important thing to grasp, this isn't decided by some algorithm in a black box or a secret panel of editors. The meter relies entirely on community evaluation to function.
Let's look at exactly how this voting system works. Underneath every single article in the feed, the community rating system gives users 4 distinct options. You can tag a story as liberal, conservative, independent, or fake news. This is exactly how the community actively categorizes the bias of every single piece of content flowing through the app. It's honestly a fascinating experiment in crowdsourced media literacy. Just look at how impartially the system handles highly politically charged content. On one side, we have a Fox News piece analyzing whether the CDC used bad science to convince people to wear masks during COVID. On the other side, there's a Guardian report on Colombia's far-right candidate Abelardo de la Espriella winning the first round of the presidential vote. The platform itself doesn't take sides on these issues. It neutrally presents the headlines from all perspectives, left-wing, right-wing, everything in between, and leaves the final verdict on bias completely up to the community's votes.
All right, part 3, built-in analysis tools, going beyond the headline.
So what happens when you see a rating you strongly disagree with, or you just want to dig a little deeper into the context? This is the active engagement loop, and it's incredibly well-structured. First, you read the headline. Second, you check the current community rating to see where the crowd is leaning. From there, and this is the key part, you click Tell Us Why to cast your own vote. Finally, for anyone wanting to dig deeper, the built-in analysis tools let you dive right into a summary, a detailed analysis, and the comment section. It completely transforms passive reading into active, critical analysis. Another fantastic analysis tool here is the related coverage feature. Notice how, for major news stories, the platform groups the coverage together. So whether you're reading about the suspect charged with murder in Hawaii or NYC Mayor Zoran Mamdani skipping an annual parade, the interface offers a button showing, say, 5 outlets.
With one single click, you can instantly compare how up to 5 different sources are covering the exact same event. It's an unbelievably powerful way to spot framing and bias in real time.
Section 4. Rating political podcasts. Audio gets evaluated. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The platform takes that same community-driven bias label and applies it to massive podcast audiences. Look at these numbers. We see NPR's up first with a massive 5.6 million weekly listeners rated by the community as independent. The New York Times podcast, The Daily, pulling in 3.8 million listeners, is rated liberal. And the Wall Street Journal's What's News, with 900,000 listeners, is rated conservative. It takes that exact same critical lens we use for written articles and applies it directly to the audio media we consume every single day. Part 5. Driving user engagement and building the community. For any crowdsourced tool like this to actually work, you absolutely need a frictionless way for users to participate. The user engagement mechanics here are brilliantly simple. They're basically binary. For any article, you have the option to just tap interesting or not interested. Or if you're scrolling through the podcast section, you can simply swipe to skip. This lets individuals instantly curate their personal news diet with almost zero effort, while simultaneously feeding valuable data back into the system to improve the whole feed. And they've made it incredibly easy to communicate directly with the developers through a really robust feedback loop. The send feedback form lets users categorize their input instantly as a bug report, a feature request, or just general feedback. And what's really smart from a tech perspective, it auto-captures your desktop and operating system info, which totally removes the friction of technical troubleshooting. It really shows a deep structural commitment to community-driven improvement. They are actively listening to the people who are building the database. And finally, Part 6, the community verdict, looking at the big picture. So, we've looked at the mechanics, the voting system, all the analysis tools, but what's the overarching philosophy behind all this? Well, this quote is pulled directly from the platform itself, and I think it perfectly encapsulates their ethos. Is NPR Politics really independent? You decide. They aren't trying to be the ultimate arbiters of truth here. They're just providing the tools, the ecosystem, and the comparisons. But the ultimate authority, that's the crowd. You are the fact checker. So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. If the community ultimately decides the truth, can a crowdsourced bias meter finally burst our filter bubbles, or does it just reveal the bubbles we're already living in? It's a fascinating approach to media literacy in the modern age, and it's one that absolutely relies on our active participation to succeed. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, keep questioning the information you consume.